People who've seen someone get fired on the first day. Why were they fired? Story 1. The afternoon of his first day as a developer, he was noticed downloading the source code of our main product app from the source control system to a personal USB stick. Said he wanted to take it home and mess with it in his spare time. Story 2 was in the local Walmart, needing to take a leak. Walked into the bathroom to a manager and employee staring down a stall covered in shit. The manager was explaining to the dude that cleaning shit is in the job description. The guy responded, "Well, I'm sorry that this is my first day, but fuck that," and walked out. Story 3. On my first day at Target, another new hire jokingly jumped into the cardboard compactor, and the boss sent him packing instantly. It wasn't on or anything. They just have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to jackassery. We'd been on the job for less than an hour, so he made something like $6 total while working for Target. Story 4. I hired temp for data input. Her first day, a guy pulled me aside and said, "She can't be here." Apparently, one of our full-time employees had a restraining order against her. I sent the employee home and apologized, then called her agency and told them she was not welcome back. Not sure what the order was for, but my guess is stalking. Story 5. I was working at a large-scale architectural firm in the Bay Area in 2004, and they hired a new guy. And after his orientation and paperwork, he finally gets to his cubicle. The first thing he does is puts on his headphones and blasts death metal, Cannibal Corpse, so loud that everyone can hear, and that's him using headphones. However, that was not got him fired. His first work item was to write a company-wide email that said Debbie Harry of Blondie was responsible for 9/11s, and wrote about 30,000 words for it. I have never seen our HR manager run out of her office so fast. Story 6. Dishwasher. First day on the job, went on break and went to the bar next door. Took a while to come back, so Chef went and found him. We needed a dishwasher bad, and he was actually pretty damn quick at doing dishes. Chef gives him a second chance. Second day, goes on break again and stops at 7-Elevens. Gets a tall boy of Mike's hard and starts drinking it right outside the back door. We have a picnic table right outside our back door for staff to eat, smoke. Chef finds him again and fires him on the spot. Sad part is, my chef probably wouldn't have gave a shit if he was always drunk. It was the fact he didn't even try to hide it. Story 7. My first day was also the first day for another dude who showed up an hour and a half late. After being there for about 15 minutes and sort of starting helping me do the very first task we were assigned, he gets pulled into an office and fired. On his way out, he is walking past where I'm still working and he says, "They fired me for being late. I can't believe it. Do you think you can give me a ride?" I laughed out loud and sheepishly said, "Sorry, dude, I'm kinda working right now." He thanked me anyways and walked out the building. He accidentally did me a big favor because so many of my new coworkers saw that interaction and thought it was so incredibly hilarious. They all became immediately friendly with me to talk about it. Story 8. I've worked at a daycare for the past 15 years. One girl that got hired got fired within 1 hour by calling the babies things and screaming out stuff like, "How do I shut this thing up?" or "God damn it, these things smell so bad." I kicked her out of the classroom after 10 minutes of thus, I much rather have been by myself. And she was found laying on the break room table playing on her phone. I never saw the HR people get to my center so fast. Story 9. Worked as a chef earlier in my life. Dishwasher guy walked into the stockroom and I literally watched him put a bottle of like $2 cooking Melrot under his apron and walk out. I grabbed the exec chef and we confronted him. He says, "I wasn't stealing it, I was just going to drink it." Exec left to get security, hotel and casino, and he runs past me with a knife in his hand, grabs the bottle, uses the knife to shove the cork in, and pathetically drinks about 3-4 of it. When he was done, he stood up all seeming proud. I held out hand and he put the knife in my hand, which I handed off to the other dishie, then put my hand back out and he gave me the bottle. I lightly bopped him on the head with it and said, "Hope this rancid shit was worth it," and then stepped aside as security dragged him out of the pit. They asked, "Police or just toss him?" I answered, "He lost his job over a $2 bottle of wine, just let the guy go home." Story 10. New hire called in on the first day of orientation tells them she can't start work until next week. Quarantine. The day she was supposed to return to work with doctor note. Worked a couple of days. She called in again and said 2 weeks before she could come back to work. Hurt her back. She worked the first 2 days after her leave was up and called in the next day saying it would be another week before she could come back to work. At that point, they had reviewed some security footage for law enforcement, unrelated, and caught her stealing. Not from the company, but from another employee. She was fired. 2 days later, her husband shows up to surprise her at work with a homemade dinner. Boss has to deal with it. Apparently, she was telling him she was working a lot of hours for the last month and a half. Story 11. I worked in audiovisual for large corporate events a long time ago. We had a helper from another location help on a big conference. He criticized everything from the moment he walked in. After his shift, our boss chewed him out. He cried on his way out the door. Then he forgot his car keys and had to come back in. He wasn't fired, but he never came back to our location to help again. Story 12. I worked in security for a hospital, and this guy comes in and asks where to meet his supervisor because he wasn't familiar with the building yet. Everything was checking out, but we make everyone go through our weapons screening system. This dude really didn't think anything of it, but his backpack alerted on our system. It was at that moment the guy realized that he had something he shouldn't have. I'm honestly surprised he told me this, but he said he forgot he had his disassembled rifle in his backpack. The dude quickly leaves the building, and every time a firearm entered the building, we had to report it to our supervisors. After receiving the report, our supervisor quickly rushed down and started checking cameras, trying to find out where he went, and escalated it to our HRO and our chief security officer. Apparently, the guy never came back, but we did confirm with the supervisor that he was supposed to meet, and that it indeed was his first day on the job. It was a military backpack, so I'm assuming he was former military and just forgot it in there. But after this whole incident, my supervisor smiles and says, "Well, this was his first and also his last day here." Crazy to think someone can just forget it in their bag, though. Story 13. My first job for me at a bank. Just finished training, 3 days, and coming in for the first real day of work, and a guy who had been training with me showed up absolutely plastered. I don't mean hungover. I mean like rancid, smelling 100% still shit-faced. I didn't know him that well, don't remember his name, but he did not appear to be a party guy or anything over the last few days. He had showed up on time and everything. He didn't even get a chance to put anything in his cubicle to clear out. Our direct manager told him to go to HR immediately for his termination, and that was that. I still don't get the logic that was going on in his head. If he got like that, just don't show up and make some sort of an excuse or something. It is a bad look to miss a first day, but it cannot possibly be worse than the option he took. Story 14. Dumbassedness. There's a really weird phenomenon in the welding trades from what I've seen. Motherfuckers will pass a weld test, then not be able to weld for shit once they're on the clock. I've seen people show up on day one and just fuck everything up, can't fit, can't weld, can't read a print, nothing. Part of the reason they even get hired is a lot of shops have the testing done by one of the people on the floor who still has their own shit to do. So unless they see obvious signs, they just pass anyone so they can get back to their work. The other part of the problem is management will very often ignore the recommendations of the testers and hire people that they say should not be hired simply because every shop is permanently understaffed and management is just hiring anyone and praying. If you can actually fabricate and weld, a shop will pretty much hire you on the spot. I have never taken a weld test and not been immediately offered a job. Part of that is because I know what I'm doing. Part of it is because of the management issues. Story 15. I was a bartender for a day, never got called to come back in. The issue was that a customer reached behind the bar to show me how to make his drink. They knew I had no experience, and my trainer left me there in the first hour to go outside and chain smoke cigarettes. The owner sat at the bar and watched me struggle and fired me for letting the customer help. I'm glad I got fired. Story 16. I was working at a bookstore in a small town, and they hired this guy to be a bookseller, cashier. On his first day, he asked if he could set out a stack of zines that he and his buddies made together about the environment. I didn't read it, so I don't know specifically what it was about. The owner of the store said sure, why not? So he put out a little stack. We learned later that day that he had no work experience, did not like to read books, and he just spent the whole day trying to sell his homemade zines to customers. He did not return to work after that. He also did not sell any zines that day. Story 17. Worked in a kitchen when I was in high school. This guy starts the same time as me, opening the place. He was told to go and cut fries for later that night. The place was really laid back, and management didn't care what you did as long as your work was done. A few hours later, when dinner rush comes through, there are no fries. I don't know what he did for nearly 5 hours, but not a single fry was made. Owner, the CL, is in and fires him, not for not cutting the fires, but he was caught stealing money from the till by a camera. Story 18. Used to work landscaping, and on his first day of work, this new guy got hired on our crew, and I tasked him with cleaning the blades of the lawnmower. They had wet grass gunk from the day before nobody cleaned, so it needed to be done quick, and he had not done it before. I went to show him, flipped the mower over, laid on my side, and had my face and hand in front of the blades explaining what to do. He decided to pull the cord for some idiotic reason, and luckily the mower was flooded and the motor didn't start. He would have cut my face and arm off bare minimum if it started. I beat the fuck out of him, but my boss saw the whole thing and fired him and bought me a coffee afterwards. Story 19. This girl walked into her first shift with blue hair. Where I worked had a pretty strict hair, makeup, and piercings dress code, and she had been told at her interview, where'd she had brown hair, about the strict rules and had signed a uniform policy form. This was almost excusable, but she just made it worse from there. During her training in another area, I was working close by and she turned, interrupting her trainer to tell me that I, another trainer, was doing my job incorrectly. She then asked if I'd like her to show me how to do it properly. I said no thanks and ignored her, then complaining to the other new girl about how rude I was and how she, blue hair, would be my boss within a couple of weeks. What got her in the end was a rare visit from the owner, who was a no-nonsense, serious businesswoman with about 8 restaurants under her belt. She greeted blue hair, asked how her first day was going, then very politely informed her she would need to fix her hair as it was against policy. This set off blue hair and she started yelling at the owner that she'd read the policy. There was nothing against blue hair and she was an idiot who couldn't tell blue hair what to do. The owner just very succinctly explained who she was, that she could tell blue hair what to do, and that the uniform policy had been written the owner herself. Blue hair just stared at her. The owner took the trainer and the manager into the office. Blue hair didn't seem concerned at all and joked about the promotion she was about to receive. They called blue hair in after about 10 minutes, and within 2 minutes, she was then marched out of the restaurant with her head down, never to be seen again. Story 20. Mortgage company, 2017. A manager hired in from outside, not an internal promote, meets his team. I am on it, probably only 4, 5 people at that time, but one of them is a very well put together lady. She is younger than me, and I am younger than the manager guy was. She was super sweet, and in no way interested in any office romance, let alone a guy probably twice her age. Literally at the first meeting, right after she introduced herself and said her name, he responded with, "Wow, you're a looker, we should smash, you'd like it." And then he 100% gave the rest of us a Michael Scott look. Realizes what he has said is awful, but we just have to marinate in the silence that followed. The victim left the room quietly, told the district manager in the best room over what happened, and the new guy was fired immediately after his welcome. Story 21. I was a call center manager for a nonprofit. Lots of college students, lots of retirees looking for something to do, but the work was important. I hired one such college student who had a great phone interview, a great in-person interview, and so we gave her the job. Told her the date of the next training class. Start time is 9 a.m., she said. See you there, done and done. We get to the date of training, and I peek in on the class, and I notice she's not there. She goes to the university that is literally 2 blocks north, so I give it 15 minutes, circle back around, still not there. I peek my head in while folks are working on paperwork, and I ask the trainer if they've heard from her. No dice. So I give her a call, and she says, "Oh yeah, sorry, my RA told me I had to be at a dorm meeting this morning. I'll be there later." To which my reply was, "My recommendation for your next job is that you actually show up on time, and if you can't, that you call your employer and let them know in advance. You are no longer employed with us. Thanks." Was it a bit harsh? Maybe. But my RA says I have to be late for work is not a valid excuse, is a lesson she needed to learn. Story 22. I had a guy who was temp, came from another site that did the same thing that we did, knew a lot, went through the process, got an interview to get hired on full-time. They did their background check, and the next day they walked him out. I don't know what they found, even the cool people wouldn't say, but they walked him straight the hell out and then pretended he didn't exist afterwards. Story 23. Worked at a call center with very strict timeliness rules. The first week of training, you weren't allowed to be late 1 minute. Some guy walked in on Monday like 5. 10 minutes late, they asked him to leave. No grace period. 1 minute late was late. If you had more than 3 lates in the first 90 days, you were let go. I don't agree with this mentality, but needless to say, 20 plus years later, I am very prompt and always early. Story 24. I got fired at the end of my first day of work at a small gift shop in a national park. Apparently, I was supposed to show up for my first day of work knowing the entire product line, where it was located on the shelves, how much it cost, and where everything was in the storage room. The other employee, who was the golden girl and had worked there for 3 years, refused to help me learn, and spent most of the day sitting out back getting high. The kicker was, the owner had spent the entire day upstairs watching the security cameras to see how I was doing, and knew that the other girl wasn't there doing her job. On the plus side, the owners of a nearby restaurant had been in the shop, and we had chatted while I was trying to find the item that they wanted. They hired me to work reception in their place, because they figured that if I could still be pleasant and chatty while having an awful day, then I would be perfect to greet their customers. It ended up being a good summer. Story 25. I worked for an ambulance company as an EMT. The kid was training in the first day and would not get off his phone and showed no interest in being here. We had just gotten a new ambulance, and all of us on the crew were excited to try out the new truck. This ambulance is big, but one thing that our mechanics do is put on top of the gas cap, gasoline only. First thing in the morning, we get to the gas station and have the rookie at least do something, so we tell him to gas up the truck. We give him the company credit card, tell him the mileage on the truck, and he starts fueling. My partner saw that he was putting diesel in the truck. We were all pissed because now the new truck is out of service and we have to use another shitty ambulance and restock it. Long story short, my supervisor fired him before lunch. Story 26. I've had to fire 2 people for trying to fight people on the first day. One dude felt threatened by everyone surrounding him like he wasn't sitting right next to our clock and device. Started throwing slurs and trying to for some reason fight the only guy who wasn't surrounding him and was just sitting down enjoying his lunch. The second guy wasn't following safety rules and got mad when someone called him out on it. He got into a screaming match with the guy saying he's been doing this for longer than the other guy's been alive. He was a 20-year-old talking to a 50-year-old man who had been doing this work for 30 years. I realized he might be stupid and fired him. Story 27. Day 1 for a brand new transfer driver. He pins a trailer to his truck to then bring it from its center down to the repair shop. For reasons beyond me, he had activated the emergency brake on the trailer. He drove all the way from the center to repair shop, roughly a 3-4 hour drive, with all 4 wheels on fire and multiple cop cars and firefighter trucks chasing after him. He pulled into the shop yard and was completely surprised, like he had no idea what had just happened. That was his first and last day. Story 28. I briefly worked as a temp staging new cars for local delivery at a port, and since the facility was secure, the keys were left inside the cars between being moved off the ship to where the truckers would pick them up, or the longshoremen would load them onto rail cars. A group of new hires were brought on board, and at the end of the day, the manager addressed them to say they all did a great job and to see if anybody had any questions. One guy pulled handfuls of car keys from his pockets and asked, "What do I do with these?" Keep in mind that the remotes had not yet been programmed, so the only way to figure out which key went to which car was to try every single one by hand. He did not come back the next day.